Hi, I'm Sherrie Lovler, and welcome to my solo exhibition called Distant Voices. So I'd like to explain a little bit about my work first. So my background's in calligraphy, Western calligraphy. I've learned fancy writing since I was in high school. And so this is how my calligraphy has advanced. And what I've learned was as my line got more fluid, it took on more of an Asian look, and that was just a natural progression. So this show, Distant Voices, is a reflection of how I'm dealing with these times. From starting with the fires, the Tubbs fire in 2017, where I had to evacuate, and going through the different things we've been through, my brother's passing, other wars and stuff, the pandemic, and things like that. So I'll lead you through a little bit. The other part of my work is that all of these paintings are paired with poems that I've written. So the poems gives you a little deeper understanding of what it is I'm doing. So this is called Turning Point, and the painting itself was done as a demo in a class I was teaching, showing how to use a 4-inch wide brush and my calligraphic mark making. And I'll be talking about this kind of mark. It's called asemic writing, A-S-E-M-I-C. And to me, it's the calligraphy movement and the gesture of calligraphy, which I love so much, and also the distant voices, which are too far away for us to understand. So there is no interpretation, no literal interpretation to these pieces. But this is just after the Tubbs fire, and the poem talks about rebuilding, and it is not from scratch. But our depths have been challenged, and we will never be the same. So I'll take you around the corner to Spring Came, which is just after the fires, at least the poem is. The painting is just recently finished. But talking about spring came with the anticipation of the bite of the first garden, as if through it all, something there is that always stays the same. So this piece shows my calligraphic mark making and then the asemic writing done with acrylic paint and then some gold powder sprinkled on top of the acrylic paint while it's wet. And what I've learned over the years is that I don't plan these pieces. They develop as I develop with them. And I've been training my intuition. So when my intuition says, or some voice in my head says gold powder, I go and get the gold powder. I don't stop and think why. You know, this has been my training. This painting, called Deep in the Forest, was first done for another poet's work called Lost by David Wagoner. And he was talking about being in the forest, and the trees are not lost. And if you're lost in the forest, you are surely lost. And then I did this painting that is very foresty and earthy. And I started thinking about my brother who passed away 2 years ago and how he had a natural burial and coming back to the soil and growing up from that. So, and making me realize that all forests are his home and every gift from the rose is his gift from me and a way to deal with his passing, which was sudden. So in these times, I'm looking at this as a coping mechanism, the circle. So circles are everywhere. We see out of the circles of our eyes. We live on the circle of the earth. We hug with the circle of our arms. And this is also the Japanese enso, the Japanese practice of painting a circle. So this painting was actually started in a wabi-sabi painting class I was teaching locally, and it ends with, a circle is always there. When you need it most, it is there. So that gives us a little bit of hope while I lead you to like the depths of this show, which is the painting called Distant Voices. And this is 14 moons, and all the circles are done in a sacred geometry style. All the circles are done with compasses, and every circle intersects other circles and other lines. And I added the asemic writing as the voices, the distant voices. But what really struck me was the death of a young poet, a 23-year-old woman, Parnia Abbasi, from Tehran, who was killed by an Israeli airstrike. And I started reading about her life and her poetry, and I was really moved by it. And so I did a dialogue of a poem between me and her poems after she had passed. And it starts with talking about hearing voices like a mirage. And she said, I weep for the both of you, for you and for me. And I ask later on, are there poets where you live, where you are? Maybe they're all poets. And she writes, the most beautiful poem in the world falls quiet. So there's this really deep kind of interaction. And that poem and this painting kind of brought everything together for me. This is the living soul. So now in the poem, I'm talking about us really spending time with our soul. And I write, if your soul if our soul survives our denial of it, what a collaboration it is. And this whole show, I really think about collaboration. And this painting here, the poem was a collaboration. This painting was first done for another woman's poem, Linda Loveland Reed, in the Reverberations show up at Sebastopol Center for the Arts. And I was chosen to paint a painting for her poem. And her poem was called Seconds. And so I did this thing that took seconds. Well, of course, I worked on it longer than that. But that energy of we only have seconds to live. And then days, where here I'm contemplating my own mortality. It is the fullness I'll remember, the gush of the wind in my lungs, the moon, the stars. And it's done in 2 layers. I have a layer of mulberry paper on top of some earlier paintings. And that gives me another layer to work with. And then instead of calligraphy up here, it was just this little real gold leaf that I use a lot, and just kind of trickling down. This was a pandemic piece. I started this painting as a bright collage. I don't usually do collage, but I was doing it, and I realized those colors had nothing to do with how I felt. So I really dug into what is it I'm feeling, and I was really frustrated with the pandemic at this time. And so I'm scratching into the piece. There's some paper that's ripping up, and just making some different kind of marks. And then the enso in the circle, the center, to hold me in a calm state of mind. And the main question in this poem is, how do I live today? As if it's the only thing that matters, because in the end, it is. And then I leave us with a little bit of brightness. It's called Inspiration. And it was done on Arches text wove paper that I then glued to a wooden board. And so when I start painting, I like to do a lot of freedom. And often I'm cropping my pieces. This one is not cropped. And so I have sort of that gut freedom in there, and then, how to tie it together. And this, I did the original painting in 2002, and I didn't know how to finish it until recently, and I pulled it out for this exhibit, and it came together. So time is my collaborator on this one. Inspiration, you always come unannounced, leaving no stone unturned or dishwashed, yet always a welcome visitor. So all the poems and the paintings are in the little catalog that I produced for the show, and it has a write-up of more about the show, and here are the paintings. And then I also included my practice to get me through these times. And these are little pages from 4x3 inch books that I like to work in. So I included that. They're always different. This is the one for my brother, kind of coming up again out of the soil. And then some of the enso paintings I do. So it's all in here with notes on all the paintings and poems, and it's available here at the shop.
Hello, I'm Renee Owen, one of the Gallery Route 1 artist members. I'd like to welcome you to my exhibition, ADRIFT, A Landscape of Loss. It's an interpretation of the current environmental and humanitarian crises facing our world today. The shapes, the patterns, the colors weave a metaphor of the changes and loss. And as the collective narrative unfolds in the process of making, it reveals a tapestry of all of our connected fragments of humanity. The Japanese practice of Naikan speaks to the interconnectedness of all life and invites all of us to live in a mindful way that benefits the well-being of us all. This first piece is titled Letting the Light Leak Through. It's an abstract calligraphic monotype. It speaks to opening our eyes to the crises that are facing us in the world today, but also to letting our eyes open to the light and the beauty of the world. This next piece is titled Melt. It's a hanging sculpture made from recycled consumer packaging wrapped in handmade paper. And the net is pulp dipped and dyed. And it speaks to all the changes that are wrought in our environment by climate change as the world's glaciers melt. This next piece is titled Moonblind. It consists of an artist's book and a wool felt pouch. The cover of the book is made of indigo-dyed cave paper. The title is letterpress printed, and there's original art and collaborative Renge poetry written by myself and poet John Thompson. The poems highlight some of the challenges our world faces today at both the macro level and also in our individual lives, but they also impart a sense of hope as we learn to drop into appreciation for the present moment. This next piece is titled Below Sea Level. It's a cyanotype triptych. The prints are made from pressed seaweed and bull kelp. The cyanotype process is a photographic process that uses non-toxic chemicals in the sun for the brilliant blue. And it speaks to our communities and entire cities that are slowly sinking from both sea level rise and from depletion of groundwater. This next piece is called Mending the Broken Bits. It's an artist's book on a metal base with vintage book covers and tea-dyed found reproductions of early American needlework patterns with Coptic binding on the spines. This next piece is titled Taking on Water. It's made from overbeaten paper pulp from plants, thread, wood that's been burned in the Shoshugiban style, mark making on the individual pieces of paper by burning with pyrography tools. The red threads wrapped around each of the bases symbolize the deaths from the many immigrants in the diaspora who've attempted to cross treacherous waters to find safe ground and a new home. This next piece is called Rising Tide 1 and 2. It consists of a pulp painting, made from blue jean and abaca pulp, stitched with words of a poem tumbling out of houses as they've been subsumed by rising seas, by rising rivers, by tides from massive hurricanes. The wire sculpture is made from recycled plant gopher cages with roots found intact, dipped in blue jean pulp, and again speaks to the mountains of debris after the hurricanes swept through, for example, the Florida coastline, inundating vintage cottages and people's homes. This next piece is called Flight of the Forsaken. The sculpture consists of wool felt cubes that stand in for tiny houses and entire populations that have been mass dispersed from their indigenous territories. Everywhere they turn, they feel forsaken, as borders, like doors to safety, remain closed to them. The porcupine quills inside the main cube show the perils that they faced as they left their homelands. This next piece is titled Exodus. It's a sculpture made of industrial felt, a wire box with paper pulp, and wax linen thread, representing the hope that some of the population that's been dispersed find themselves again in towns and cities where they're welcomed and they can find each other again. This last piece is titled In Search of Somewhere. It's a sculpture made of paper-covered wire and woven together in a random weave technique. The shadows give a sense of foreboding as those who have been dispersed from their homelands wander aimlessly, trying to find safe harbor. I'd like to just close with one of the poems from the haiku book in the show that gives a sense of hope. Waiting for you, moon blind on the opposite shore. Thanks to Gallery Route 1 and all of our artist members, everyone who contributed to putting on not only this show, but all the many shows that we put on throughout the year. I do hope that you all come out to see these 4 current exhibits, and we have various events happening throughout the next 5 weeks listed on the website. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Fedra Yazdi. I'm a contemporary painter. I am showing a body of my work, The Way of What Was, part of the Missing Homeland series here at Gallery Route 1. I want to speak to you about my paintings and a bit about my process. Here you see one of my new paintings. This particular painting was done on extra fine Italian linen, and I like to work with gouache and acrylic. The core of my work deals with issues like belonging and the universal search for finding home. This particular painting deals with exile and migration. You see on top that you see these figures that have packages on top, luggages, and they're in movement mode. And I have men and women out here who are separated by these lines, symbolizing the migration mindset and the feeling of separation you feel as you're going through the migration. I also intentionally have all the figurines, the men and women, faces blank, because I believe as you are in transition mode, as you're dealing with your new home or finding a new home, You have that mask on, and you are looking for a home. So as you're going through that transition, I feel like there is a lot of feelings that need to be addressed. So that this is what that is symbolizing here. And I also like to have a little bit of separation between the figurines of the female and the male, and the homes and the pets. This kind of talks about here about what's left behind. The homes, their pets, your plants, the stuff that makes you feel like a home is no longer part of your life anymore, and it's left behind. And then over here we have, again, the pet that's looking this way, and the men who are just standing here, kind of in search for a new meaning of, of what is it all, where is the new home, what is it all, and their pet is looking this way. And these figurines in the boxes here in diagonal shapes, isolated, because again, part of being migration, there is a good amount of isolation involved, which is why usually you find them not facing each other, and just floating in a lot of patterns and chaos. So that also is talking about the whole meaning of belonging and search for home. And the same, I would say, within this painting, similar topics I am covering here as well. These figures with the luggage in the back, and the woman here in colorful clothes, and carrying their pets this time with them to the new spot. And one of the reasons I like to use bright colors is because although migration and isolation with it is a very heavy topic, I think there is an element of resilience and hope that every immigrant carries with them. That is a few things. I would say that they're hoping to find peace and a new home for themselves, a new life. And also, there is always this part of them that wants to go back to their home. I like to always say that being an immigrant, sometimes it is like to live in a guest house, in a guest room. You're always a guest, you want to be in your best behavior. And there is nothing like, finding a home or going back to your home. Everyone knows that. Yeah. So, also, in this painting, that it's a little bit different. I chose a little bit of darker, warmer colors here, I want to say. I love the contrast of cold and warm colors. Again, using color as a metaphor to talk about, how contrast it could be to live as an immigrant, living with your past and your new life. Definitely working with those ideas here, using very Persian symbols here, and colors, to stay connected with the past, while using my abstract work technique to, I would say, connect with the now, with the present. And I feel, and a lot of my work, as you see, has the element of abstract, which is my Western life, my new home, and then the old ancient motifs that I use here. My work is inspired by gabbé rugs, and gabbé rugs are ancient rugs, and a lot of, for centuries, these rugs were made by women, And these women were using these rugs to tell a story, tell their own stories. And my work is echoing this ancient tradition while trying to move forward into the future. So what you see here, the smaller pieces, these are 16 by 20. This is part of also the Missing Homeland series. I call these the migration series. This is really focusing on the early stages of migration as you leave home, which is why I have the lines a little thicker. The isolation and the boxing characters are very much emphasized here. The pets are all isolated by themselves. I don't have the pets and the human figurines together. If they are next to each other, boxed up. And you see it here as well, where there is a lot of details going on, kind of talking about, just the search for home and leaving the old home, and the pets are by themselves, the trees are by themselves, the homes are by themselves. Okay, I like to bring your attention to this painting right here. This painting in particular is one of those paintings that I think is closest to the concept of living in exile. You have two rectangles in the center. One is basically the trees, the home, the pets, and that are left behind. And in the bottom, you see fish, and that is very popular in Gabe rugs, and also homes, again, left behind, their flowers and whatnot. And outside, you see these human figurines that are floating in the air, and that's really, like, I feel like the early stages of finding home and looking for a meaning as far as what it means to search for a place to belong.
Hi, I'm Will Thoms. I'm a member here at Gallery Route 1, and I have the opportunity, as all of us do, every 2 or 3 years actually, to have a show in the annex. And the annex is a 65 square foot little room, so it's challenging. But I thought, I'm going to fill it with 21 small paintings, and here they are. And as the camera follows the paintings, I'll read the titles. This one's called Shapeshift. This is Vista. All of these are 9 inches by 9 inches. Mixed media on panels. This one's called Focal Point. Each one is an experiment. They were done over about 12 months. Each one is an improvisation. Oh, that last one, I didn't give you the title. It's called Day's End. This one is called Three Left Standing. Red Tide. This one's called Two Left Standing. Some of these pieces happen very quickly, maybe in 1 or 2 hours. This one's called Surface Tension. Other pieces take days and sometimes weeks to complete. This is called Whiplash. This is called Toss-Up. The Missing. Each one starts off with maybe a splash of color, or a line, or a doodle, and then develops from there. This is called Traces in yellow. There's 2 like that. This one was the yellow one. This is called Tracks. And Kind of Blue. Shadows. And Excavation. This is the second one called Traces in pink. Number 18 is Fracture. Number 19, Tracks in silver. Moonglow. And the last one, Scrawl. Number 21. And thank you for tuning in. It's better to see it in person, so I hope we have a chance to visit. It starts tomorrow, which is the 20th of September, runs through October 26th.